Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cortoliggio. Want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, where we're finding in using myself here. Here I am again. And we have on for part 3, very special guest, Sheryne Willson. Sheryne, how are you doing today?
I am great.
Is
it Monday?
We are into part 3. I love your earrings, by the way.
Thank you.
All right. So before Sheryne got on, she was, getting herself, a little makeup and stuff like that. She's eating.
No, I was born this way. What are you talking about? I just woke up and I had my hair done and I came with these Vegas earrings.
And you came with it because what did you say? When in Vegas, right? So
no, I said can't go to Vegas right now, so bring Vegas to me.
Okay, so there you go. You're bringing Vegas over to you. So we are in part 3, Sheryne. It's been an interesting 2 parts. We're going to do a part 3, and then we'll pick up sometime in the first quarter next year. We'll have you back on, and we'll rock and roll some more. And what I want to start off today with is mood. That's what I want, is mood. How's your mood today, Sheryne?
Mood. My mood is fluctuates. My mood is pretty good at the moment. I'm pretty calm. I'm chill. I'm pretty stable at the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how does food affect your mood and your whole emotional well-being? How does food come into play? We spoke about traumas and so forth. So let's get into food now. What's food's role in energy and your mood?
Oh, I feel like we could go down many different paths with this.
Select one, and then we go from there.
As I was just saying to a friend, I feel like I'm at the point in my life where chocolate every day is a necessity. I think food, I have different constructs around food. For me, I feel food really is fuel for your body, and I've always looked at it that way. And I've had a pretty good upbringing around it because I believe that your beliefs and values are shaped when you're younger. And so for me, like food is fuel for your body.
Sure.
And it can affect your mood. It can affect your energy levels. I think, long answer short is I think there are foods that you can put into your body which can bring you life and vitality and energy. And there are foods that can tax your system and ultimately mess with some of the neurochemistry and bring your moods down.
What are some of those foods that tax chemistry?
Sorry, I lost you there. Can you repeat that?
I keep going on and off lately, so I'm going to have to fix that somehow. I don't know. I'll worry about that, in between podcasts. So what foods can tax you? What can tax your neurochemistry? I think this is important.
Ooh, I think, anything that, first of all, the body has to recognize if it's food or not is going to be taxing. So I'm talking about processed foods, chemicals. I'm talking about dyes, fractionated oils, that type of hydrogenated oils, that type of thing. A lot of people don't understand that, it takes 21 days for your body to recognize what hydrogenated oil is, let alone dispel it. And so while your body's trying to recognize it, it's just bumping around, trying to tap all your receptors, destroying a lot of those receptors, those enzymes and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, can you imagine you're trying to figure out a math problem or trying to trying to drive through traffic? And meanwhile, your body's like, we're just a little busy over here figuring out what the hell's in our body at the moment.
Right.
And I think that has a direct effect on your hormones, your neurochemistry. Many people have heard me say hormones are life. Hormones run the show. Hormones run the show.
Right.
People say like your heart keeps you alive, but your hormones run the show.
What I find interesting, Sheryne, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, it was the foods that we ate were homemade. At some point in time in the late 70s, it kind of changed. And I remember, Hungry Man dinners and things of that nature. And, it just became so popular that these foods were just part of our diet, excuse me, on a regular basis. And, I remember I was in high school or college at the time. I don't know. It was a long time ago. You go into school and you feel like you got some brain fog going on. So eating these processed foods, eating these foods that have high omega-6 fatty acids, the fillers, the corn, the wheat, the soy, all of that can affect the neurochemistry, creating some type of neurotoxicity, which is very important for our listeners to understand right now. And what are some of the foods that give you life, vitality, and energy? What do you eat for that?
I'm on a different level. So
Tell me what level, or tell me what
I'm
level.
on ocean algae. I'm on phytoplankton. I'm on, I like blue magic. So the blue spirulina, so the Salt Lake spirulina.
Mhm,
I like moringa powder.
mhm.
I'm into herbs. I'm the tree bark girl that's making tea,
Mhm.
all these tinctures and stuff.
So
I'm on a,
take us
yeah.
through a day. Take us through a day. When you get up in the morning, what do you have for breakfast? What is that first meal of the day?
I cycle my meals about every 2 months. So every 2 months, I change with the seasons, and I really tap into my body with what I want. So I was doing a green smoothie
Mhm,
shake in the morning from July until about late September. And then I follow a lot of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine in the sense of, you know, the seasons change. So I don't want to be eating cold foods.
mhm,
So I stopped doing the smoothie thing and transition. So I was doing a green smoothie,
mhm,
and now I've changed that into like more soup stuff. But in the morning, I actually do gluten. I do organic spelt rye, stone ground from like
mhm,
my neighbors down the street, like organic
mhm,
farmers. And I do that with either coconut oil, or I do like a ghee, like a natural butter. And I usually have some kind of fruit. I make my own jam if I want jam. That's like my super comfort food. Like,
mhm,
and then I usually have like a protein shake, a vegan protein shake with it, which is usually like chlorella powder or spirulina
mhm.
powder. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. And then for snack in the afternoon, I like to have veggies and hummus. And like I do like a turmeric cauliflower zucchini hummus, and that I make myself.
Right,
Roasted cauliflower. It's
right.
amazing. Um, and I'll do that with veggies. I'm not a big daytime eater, and because I'm not exerting a lot of my energy in the day, most of my
Right.
energy is either in the morning or at nighttime. And so
Mhm,
that's when I kind of will eat more.
mhm.
Um, so, and sometimes I like a raw vegan bar, like a date bar with like, you know, I don't do a lot of nuts and seeds because they're high in omegas. Like, so I be careful. I be careful with that stuff.
Mhm,
Um, but I like a good raw vegan bar with coconut and like,
mhm.
all the superfoods that you can put in it. I'll do that as a snack in the afternoon or pre-workout. I'll do a dark chocolate too. If my body's craving those minerals. Of course I drink sea salt and iodine and
Right.
cranberry extract and pine extract and bee pollen and like you name it. I'm all into that hippie gippy stuff, whatever you want
The
to call
hippie
it.
hippie stuff. Okay. Well,
Yeah, and then for
I
yeah,
was brought up in the '60s, so I understand the hippie stuff. You know, my cousins that are a little bit older than I, they had more of it than I did. So, how does trauma affect the mental and emotional well-being? You have these traumas. We all have traumas. How does it adversely affect, and how can we get out of that?
wow, okay, that's a great question. How can trauma, what do you want to know? Can you narrow that question down a little bit more?
Whatever you want to tell me, and then we go from there, Sheryne. This is not staged, just to let everybody know. Sheryne and I, we just go. We're just going.
How does trauma affect you?
Yeah, how does trauma affect the mental and emotional well-being of a person?
Okay, so the mental and emotional well-being, I mean, I could go down different avenues, and I'm going to save that for a lot of the psychotherapists and psychologists to go into that. I will say, from an NLP perspective, it changes your internal representation of the world,
Mhm,
right? Case in point, you were bit by a dog when you were younger. Now, when you're older and you go to the park, you don't see a dog, you see a villain, right?
mhm,
That's going to affect you. It's going to affect, your blood pressure. It's going to affect how you react if you're with a partner and you're walking to the park and they're like, let's go to pet the dog. And you're like, oh my God, why don't you care about me? That dog could kill me. It almost killed me when I was 5. It's going to affect your
right.
relationships. It's going to affect, your physiological response system. So it's going to put you in a stress response. There's so many different ways that trauma affects you. At the main level of it all is that what it does is it locks you in a pattern until it's released,
Right.
right? And that is the whole point of why I do what I do, is to go back and to release it, because that mechanism's still playing out, right? That 5-year-old that didn't have time to process what the heck was happening to this dog.
Mhm,
The dog may have bit him. Maybe the dog chased him. Maybe the dog was just there, but their perception of fear was so strong that they're like, this dog attacked me, and that plays out in the unconscious mind to the point where it's like, okay, what do we do here? We
mhm,
initiate trauma response, but how do we stop this? Because this child doesn't have the ability or the
right.
skill set or the outside knowledge or a different perspective to see anything different. So this plays on, hey, because that's a survival mechanism. Ego, unconscious mind steps in, Maslow's law steps in. We
Mhm,
need to survive here,
mhm,
and that plays until you say, thank you very much. I don't need you to tell me that I need to survive. So every time it does see that dog again, alarm goes off going, I remember this. And that's the power of the brain. Okay, this goes into a whole understanding of mind mapping and how the brain actually works in predicting unfortunate circumstances. So
So,
that's supposed to happen.
so tell me, how does an NLP practitioner then, excuse me, take somebody like that and help them deal with that? Because I do remember where I grew up in northern New Jersey, there were a ton of dogs that were roaming the streets. As a matter of fact, one of my professors in graduate school, he got a new species taxonomy. I don't know what he did, but there is,
Baby dinosaur.
yeah, there is a name for it. I mean, you could be walking to school, and it's interesting how you say that, because I remember walking to school and I remember being attacked by a dog where he jumped up and he had his paws and he hit my chest. He fell back. I didn't fall back. And then I ran and so forth. And I was a little afraid of Poochies, for a while, but not anymore. But how does an NLP practitioner take somebody from that? So I'm not afraid of them anymore.
Right. And so such a good question, because you can't solve an unconscious problem using the conscious mind.
Mhm.
So this unconscious problem of the fear mechanism playing out, you can't just talk yourself out of it. You can't be like, look, the dog is friendly.
Right, right.
Because it's like it's recorded the emotion, it's recorded the trauma, it is embedded, it's got a neural pathway recorded in there. And so the only way to go and change that is to do it on an unconscious level. Well, how do you do that on an unconscious level? Well, there's 4 ways you can do that. And this is what science has done. You can reprogram the mind using one, psychedelics, which actually changes the brain chemistry. 2, you can actually re-traumatize yourself, give yourself a different trauma, bring in the bear, take the dog away, bring in the bear. Now the dog doesn't look so bad. So we can re-traumatize yourself. I don't recommend doing that.
I was going to say that's not recommended.
No, 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 not at all. And 3, I mean, hypnotherapy and meditation, right? And that's just getting in, and that's because these methods put you into a theta brainwave state. And so that's when you can change some of these programs, change these belief systems and values. So yeah, that is what I use. I use NLP,
Mhm,
which allows you to put you in a trance state, a theta state. And theta state's that waking kind of morning
mhm.
state when you just start waking up and you're like, was that a dream? Am I half awake? When you're kind of dozing off. It's that creative state. It's very powerful. It happens between the ages of 0 and 9. That's why kids are sponges, because it is the most
Right,
programmable state. And
right.
you go in there and I like to use a method called timeline therapy. It's a very powerful technique. And it just is based on the reverse mirror image technique, which is
Mhm.
really powerful, been studied for over 60 years, and that's basically getting the brain to change its perspective, getting the mind to see something differently. Was it a dog or was it not?
Mhm.
Getting the body to be dissociated and associated back in the state,
Mhm.
changing the state.
Mhm.
Was it fear or was it protection? And through these mechanisms, basically changing someone's perspective, which ultimately changes the emotion, which ultimately changes the action that the client will make next time they see a bear or a dog. So those are kind of the techniques that I use, which are really, really powerful.
Now, somebody that has a lot of trauma, right, growing up, do they have boundary issues? Is it difficult for them to draw that line? And does NLP help out with that also?
You know, uh, Boundaries, absolutely. I think boundaries comes from an understanding what's safe and not safe.
Mhm.
And as soon as that's been violated or there's confusion around that, then there one does not know boundaries. I don't know when my safety begins and ends. And this is why it's so important in child development to have, boundaries, right? To teach the child this is the parameter of safe. And outside of that, there's consequences which can be unsafe. Not all of the time, but
Mhm.
you know, this is what could happen. And it's not to create fear, but to a child doesn't know what it doesn't know. It doesn't know all the options. It sees a road with a ball in the middle. It doesn't know that a bus comes every day at 4 o'clock and could hit it. You know, that's the boundary is you can play until 3 o'clock outside, or you can play after 3, but mom or dad need to be outside to watch to make sure that you don't run
Right.
across the street. Whatever. It's safe and unsafe. So yes, when there's trauma, that causes confusion in the mind, like especially beginning ages of what is considered safe and what is not safe.
Right.
Then we bring into the whole idea of attachment styles, which is a whole nother thing, which a lot of people really, you can do a whole. I did a whole actually segment on it on my podcast about attachment styles. So you can check that out. But attachment styles basically set somebody up for life in that how you're attached to everything in life. So how you're attached to money, how you're attached to relationships. And
Mhm.
that's all based on, again, childhood security.
Right.
Were your needs being met from mommy and daddy when you were young?
Right.
And if not, that is going to change your viewpoint on everything and how you see
Right.
it.
So and you and I were talking a little bit about this beforehand, from an NLP perspective, if you're in a bad marriage, is it better to separate and divorce for the child? Would that be better, or is it something that stay
Oh.
together? You and I were discussing a little bit of this before we got on the air today. From an NLP perspective, how would you deal with that?
I think this is really based on individual beliefs and values because I've coached a lot of clients through this thing. I fundamentally believe in authenticity and I believe in really displaying out your values. And so if you stand for love, but you're in a toxic relationship that is no longer loving, the
Mhm.
child is not dumb and they will pick up on that. Um, and so then you're no longer you're no longer showing the child what love is. You're actually showing the child what compromise is.
Right.
Okay. And we'll take it a step further. Now you're showing what, inadequate boundaries are. Now you're showing the
Right.
child, you're teaching them what is healthy in a relationship and what isn't. That is the whole boundaries thing. What is safe and what is not safe.
Right.
And you're also teaching them about consequences. Okay. But if you enable them not to view this in whatever way you want to, either by lying to them or pretending, like a lot of
Mhm.
parents do, it will come back. Children are not dumb. Children
Right.
are not dumb.
Sure.
They're sponges. They're so
They just
perceptive,
they
and
just pick up on everything.
they pick up on everything, body language. They pick up on, the tiniest things you say, any movements, any of that stuff. And they take it personally.
Sure.
Okay. So
Sure.
I think it's better personally that if you're in a toxic marriage, you know, I believe if you can move to a place of co-parenting and conscious parenting together, but separate, that is probably the best bet. But that's really difficult. And not everybody's willing to operate in that system, because of their wounds, because of emotional trauma, because of X, Y, and Z.
Right. Sure.
So
Absolutely.
from an NLP's perspective, I don't think I can really have a stance on that. I think it really comes down to what are your values and beliefs? Because if you value marriage over, I had a client tell me the other day that was in a miserable marriage for 45 plus years, miserable, toxic, horrible. But her belief system was so powerful in religiosity that she was like, I will, even if it destroys my kid, I am more devoted to my faith than my
Right.
child. Right. And so you have to
Right.
look, that's her value system. And that's okay. And now she's making amends for that.
Right.
So you just need to choose what you want, choose what is a greater value for you. And if being together for X, Y, and Z reasons is more important than X, Y, and Z, then just deal with the consequences that your child may need to go to therapy in the future.
Right.
Let's
Sure.
face it, whether you're married or divorced, your child's going to need to go to therapy. It's kind of a tough world out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, in the same vein, trauma, childhood trauma, divorce, separation, do these individuals then have difficulty with unconditional love and forgiveness when it comes to a relationship, whether it's a friend or somebody that they want to be romantically involved with? And what does NLP do for that?
Yeah. So, monkey see, monkey do. And so, what children are taught in specifically the ages of 0 to 9, I would say even 0 to 12, is pretty much sets them up for life. Now, some of you might be like, wow, that's really disappointing. However, there are things and ways you can do to override these systems that have been implanted in you. One of those
Right.
through NLP is, we do a lot of timeline therapy. We do trance work, theta
Mhm.
work, reprogramming the mind, reinstalling different values and beliefs through different perspective, using language, using visionary, imagination, all that. There's so many different techniques, language techniques, all that. But another way is to make a commitment to make a change.
Right.
Decide that you want to value something different and then choose that value for the next 63 plus days. And that is what the science is now coming out. It's not 21 days to build a habit.
I was going to say, why 63 days? I
It's
find that
actually 63 days. So yeah, it takes about 21 days for your body to become into the motion of the habit, to become comfortable, but for it to be actually a program belief, an autonomic response or automatic response, you need 63 plus days. So if you feed yourself this belief system 24/7 for 63 plus days, you could probably change your whole outlook. That's why self-development's so big. That's why people love reading those books. And that's why you see people change just from reading books, because they're basically brainwashing themselves every single day to believe something different,
Mhm.
And if you can do that consistently, well, then at the end of it, you'll kind of have a different outcome. So if you tell yourself every single day that you like broccoli and
Right.
do some NLP around broccoli and you do some work together, hypnotherapy around broccoli, and every single day you read books about broccoli and you submerge yourself in an environment where other people like broccoli, by 63 days, you're going to be like, you know what? I like broccoli, because you have convinced yourself in so many other
Right.
ways why it works for you.
Got it. Understood. What about forgiveness? Difficult to forgive people?
Yeah. Forgiveness. You're just like throwing these topics out.
I
Forgiveness.
always
Forgiveness, I
throw these
believe, is,
topics out.
I feel like people are not taught how to forgive, especially if you did not have a religious upbringing. Forgiveness is not something that is openly talked about. I recommend a great book called Radical Forgiveness. I also teach this in a workshop. I also offer this for clients, one-on-one sessions. Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping. Absolutely crucial if you're wanting to make physical health changes in your life,
Mhm.
because bitterness has been shown in all Western medicine, allopathic, Chinese medicine, Aboriginal medicine, you name it, Mayan medicine, all of it. It's been proven bitterness is what can
Mhm.
destroy the organs of the body, and whether it's the liver, where there's the lungs, it depends on the culture. But we can all say bitterness doesn't do very much for you. And so I think radical forgiveness, and there's a difference between forgiveness and radical forgiveness. Because often forgiveness, people just are going through the motions and they're
Mhm.
not actually accessing the feelings,
Right.
nor are they forgiving themselves.
Right. Sure.
Because everything's a mirror and a reflection. So you can't, and I say this just like you can't love somebody until you love yourself. You can't forgive somebody until you forgive yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, forgiveness is huge, huge, and not talked about enough, which is why I am offering workshops about forgiveness in the new year, because it's so foreign to people.
Yeah, you know what? Forgiveness is important, and you have to forgive yourself also. Without doing that, you can't move forward. So, excuse me. Let's talk about the ego in all of this with NLP, because I find NLP very interesting. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that are doing it. I have friends that are doing it, and so forth and so on. So, what about the ego in NLP?
Mm. Personally, this is just a personal opinion. I don't know what NLP's stance, so to say, is on ego.
Right.
Um, but I fundamentally believe that actually, I don't say fundamentally, I'm not 100% locked into this belief yet, but
Hmm.
I'm beginning to believe that the unconscious mind and the ego work together, if not are one,
Hmm.
because of the survival mechanism. And a lot of people like to spiritualize and what is it? I can't think of the word, but castrate
Right.
castrate the ego
Hmm.
and basically say that it's wrong and we need to kill it. No, we don't need to kill it. We need to actually become one with it. And something that I have learned in NLP, when you bring it to the surface and bring it to the light, then you can make change. Just like Carl Jung, until the unconscious mind is aware, until the conscious mind is aware of the unconscious, we will continue to do what we don't know.
Hmm.
So I believe that if we can make peace with the ego
Hmm.
and bring it to the light and love it back to a place of safety, then it will work for us because it's
Right.
there to keep us alive. Just the unconscious mind, like your unconscious mind has prime directives to keep you alive. You don't want to get rid of it. It's 30,000 times stronger than the conscious mind. The ego
Right.
is so powerful. Look at anybody with a strong desire that's driven by ego.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's not a bad thing. And I know some people
Oh,
are
I was
going
going
to,
to say, what makes the ego good then? Because you hear so much that in ego, he's egotistical, she's egotistical, she's whatever. But the ego is not a bad thing, right?
no, I think, I had this incredible mentor tell me once that anything that's exaggerated, it becomes something we need to tame. And
Mhm.
so, and our greatest gifts exaggerated are our greatest weaknesses. So the
Right.
ego is, when we say somebody's egotistical, it really is somebody that's just so primal and is so logical, left brain, masculine energy that it's exaggerated beyond our realms of what we would
Right.
consider appropriate, you know? But again, that's not a bad thing because maybe that's what keeps them alive.
Survival. Yes, it's
Yeah.
a survival mechanism at that point. Now, believe it or not, again, we're coming up on 40 minutes, and it really goes very quick with you and I. So we've had 3 podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay. Number
This is
one,
like a
number one,
series.
how can people contact you? That's the first thing.
Yeah, people can contact me. I'm pretty much everywhere, every platform. LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, Clubhouse, you name it. You can find me
Right.
at Clubhouse at She Will Be Alive. You can find me on Instagram at Innermind Performance, Innermind Performance. You can go, find me on my website, innermindperformance.com. You can also email me, Sheryne, SHERYNE, at innermindperformance.com. So yeah, I mean, you can find me anywhere. You can just Google my name.
And it just comes up. You Google my name, you don't want
Yeah,
to see
I
what
sure
comes up.
hope there's not inappropriate pictures, but yeah.
Well, I did Google, and it was like 1 or 2, but we
Oh,
held
okay.
that. So
Woo.
anyway,
Probably my Vegas days. No.
so we're gonna pick up again in the beginning of the year. And if you can summarize 3 important points that we've discussed over these 3 past weeks in doing our part 1, part 2, part 3, what would you leave our listeners today?
I think we really looked at, life purpose, the evolution of the mind, and the depths of spirituality and wholeness.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, it's hard to summarize. We've gone up and down, over and around, and come back through Alice's Wonderland. So
No
I
doubt.
feel there's a lot that people can take away here. Even touching a little bit on the nutrition and the food stuff, which I know you're passionate about too. So
Mhm.
yeah, the evolution of the mind and holistic health.
I
Like,
love that because I think that's important. And I think that's our next topic. We're going to delve more into
oh
that.
dear. I feel like I need to start reading some of my old textbooks to, so
So
I
that you can
can,
answer my questions.
yes,
Awesome.
yes.
So, Sheryne, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on. We're going to have you back on again in January at some point in time. We're going to take a couple of weeks off. I think I have one or two more podcasts that we're going to do, and then we're going to take a little break for the holidays. So
Awesome.
I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank all of our listeners for listening in. These conversations have been incredible. You know where to contact me. Just put in Dan Cartalicchio and all sorts of stuff that just comes up when you put in Dan Cartalicchio. So it's all good. Sheryne, thank you very much. It's
Thank
been
you.
awesome. And have a great rest of your year. And I'm sure we're going to talk before that because we got some projects that we're discussing. And we'll pick up again in January.
Sounds good. Sounds perfect.
I want
Thank
to
you
thank
so much.
everybody for listening. Thank you, Sheryne. Everybody have a great rest of 2021. Take care.